Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Miriam and I love books. In 2021 I challenged myself to read 365 books and I usually give updates on this on my channel, and today is a sort of reading vlog in which I show you my experience reading English books for sort of 7 days. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm going to make the 7 days, but I actually set the goal for myself to read only English books for a week, but then I decided that a week, if you read 365 books, that's like a book a day, so I have to read 7 English books before I get into Dutch books again, because for some reason I struggle to start reading English books. Once I'm reading an English book, it's absolutely no problem. I mean, I used to be an English teacher and I've been in the UK so many times, and my English is not, it's not that my reading speed when I read English books is lower than when I read Dutch books. Well, it sort of depends. Some English books are harder to read, especially classics, because the language is more difficult and it's also not my native language. But on the other hand, there's actually no reason why I should not read English books. But then a couple of weeks ago I filmed my reading challenge update, in which I told you about all the goals I set for myself, and one of them is to read 100 English books, and so far I've read only 35, 36 English books, maybe a bit more, I don't know, and I thought that has to change. So therefore I set myself a challenge to read 7 English books in a row, and maybe I will do more, I don't know. It sort of depends on my TBR for the rest of the month. Today is the 20th of July. I already read one English book. I read Us Against You by Frederick Backman, the sequel to Beartown. It wasn't as good as Beartown, but it was still... I really like the ending and the suspense in the book. And there are some beautiful, beautiful sentences in this, and how people drive apart but also find their way back to one another. I thought that was beautiful. And it was really nice to read a bit more about the characters, but still I enjoyed Beartown most. I think also because the first 75% of the book is really dark, and for obvious reasons, because Beartown, but because it continues where Beartown stops, and that was also quite, well, also quite a dark book, and some terrible things happen. But for some reason, Beartown, the darkness did not overshadow the story in Beartown, and I had a feeling that it did in Us Against You, until the ending, even though a terrible thing happens at the end of the book, but you sort of expect it, and yeah, that does help. So at the moment I'm reading 2 books on my e-reader, or not 2 books, but I'm reading The Shadow of Your Smile by Susan May Warren, which is the 5th book in the Deep Haven series, and after that I'm planning to read the 6th book as well. I don't know its title at the moment. Maybe I should have looked it up, but those books are going to be my 2nd and 3rd book. And then I'm going to read Miss Austen. This is, well, my library has a small selection of English books. Actually, I believe that for a Dutch library it's quite a big selection, but they're not really the kind of books I like to read. But I'm really curious about this book, Miss Austen by Gil Hornby, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one actually. And next, so that's the 4th book. Next on the stack is Brick Marie Was Here, also by Frederick Backman. This is a lot smaller than Us Against You, and also the font is bigger, because the font in Us Against You was so small. But still, that I went quite quickly through that book because Bachman's writing style is, I think it's beautiful and somehow also easy to read, and so I'm really looking forward to this one as well. The funny thing is that Bachman's books are obviously Swedish and they're also translated into Dutch, but for some reason I love to read the English books, also because buying the English books is cheaper than buying the Dutch editions. And I don't know, I've never read one of his books in Dutch, but I have a feeling that the English translation is really well done. And if I'm done with it, I'm going to read Tweet Cute, and that's going to be the 6th book. I don't know what book I'm going to read after that, but it's also going to be an English book, and hopefully I actually hope that I'm in a sort of well, how do you put it, that I sort of enjoy it so much that I'm going to read a lot more English books from now on, because yeah, well, I read a lot of translated books too, and I don't know how to put it, but it's actually better to read a book in its original language, which is going to be really hard with Frederick Backman's books because I don't speak Swedish. I don't know about you, but a lot of books I read are translated from English to Dutch, and that actually feels a bit weird because I'm perfectly able to read English books. So yeah, well, I sort of this is actually fun because it turned out to be a sort of TBR video mid-month instead of a reading vlog. I wanted this to be a reading vlog, but I already told you about the books that I'm going to read, so maybe I'm just leaving it like this. Maybe I know what I'm going to do. I also do a video at the end of this 7 English book week thingy, and I'll let you know how long it actually took me to read these books, because I started Us Against You on Sunday and today it's Tuesday, so yeah. And to be honest, I'm also listening to Dutch audiobook and I'm reading Dutch non-fiction books, so it's not entirely only English, but I'm reading a lot more English books than Dutch books at the moment, so that's actually great. Or not at the moment, but I'm planning to do that the coming week. So I'm also going to film a reflection video, which I will put after this video as well, so it's one video for you. So enjoy watching my reflection on reading only English books for a while. Yeah. And a question before I forget, because I might forget this in the reflection video. Do you often read translated books? Is that easy for you? I mean, if you're from Germany, or if you're from like a country that's not the US or the UK, it's, for some reason I think it's easier to read translated books, because I think a lot of books that have been translated are English, because English is like one of the main languages. But if you're actually not Dutch and looking for interesting translated Dutch books that have been translated into English, you should definitely check out my favorite book of all time, The Letter for the King, written by Donkerdracht. I don't know what you will think about it. I mean, I might actually make a video about this in the future. It's one of my favorite books. It has been one of my favorite books for a really long time. But I sort of also understand that if you read like very complicated fantasy books, you might not enjoy it as much as I did when I had not read any fantasy book yet and I read The Letter for the King. But you should definitely give it a try. Let me know in a comment if you have read this book and what you thought of it. It's really different from a Netflix adaptation. I promise you that. I don't know, maybe you don't think that's a good thing, but I think it's a very good thing. I have not seen a Netflix adaptation, but I read quite a few things about it and I don't think I want to see that. But, well, okay, it's time for a reflection video. I should probably stop chatting and start reading some English books. As promised, a short recap of me reading only English books for a week. I had to think about the time I set for myself, but the idea was that I read 7 English books before I started reading Dutch books again, and that sort of worked out. The only difference was I was listening to a Dutch audiobook and I was also reading a Dutch non-fiction book, but for the rest of it I read 7 English books before I dove into a Dutch book again, and to be honest, after that I read only 1 Dutch book and then I continued reading English books. What I learned from it is that reading English books is not hard for me. For some reason I convinced myself that reading English books is more difficult than reading Dutch books, and I studied English language and culture for 6 months, and I studied English language to become a teacher for more than 4 years because it took some time for me. But, well, the English part actually took only 3.5 years. The other part, the teaching part, was a bit harder. But anyway, I've been an English teacher. I've been in the UK a number of times. I can't even, I don't know, but it has been a while since I've been there, so I think that's where my fear for reading English books comes from. I think that they will put me in a reading slump, and now I challenge myself to read 7 English books in a row. I rediscovered that it's not hard for me. Maybe some books do put me in a reading slump, like for example classics. I'm not very fond of them, but I'm also not a big fan of Dutch classics, and they also put me in a reading slump. So it might be the classic type and not the language. The language is not the problem. So it's inspired me to read more English books, because if I want to achieve my goal of reading 100 English books this year, I will have to read 10 books a month in English, because well, I did not read as much English books as I would like in the previous 7 months of the year. So from now on I add 10 books that are in English on my TBR list. And because my August TBR because I put it in alphabetical order, there are a lot of English books that I put on my TBR that start with a T. So I have to read all the English books in a row. So actually I'm doing it again, sort of. But actually I do hope I can read more English books in August. I have a December TBR planned out, and I believe there are more than 10 English books on that TBR. I have my reasons for having that TBR already, because I do not have a September TBR or an October TBR or a November TBR, but I do have my December TBR, and you will know why in the future, because I got this idea for this TBR in, what was it? May? April? Something like that. Anyway, I'm really happy with that, and I'm going to continue to do that. So there are a lot of English books on that TBR as well. So if I read more English books in August, then I don't have to read as much books in September, October and November, because I don't know if I have that amount of English books to get there. Well, on my e-reader there are a lot of English ebooks. I think there are more English books than Dutch books on Kobo Plus, but we'll see about that. The good thing is that my library does have very interesting English books. I thought they did not have a lot of English books, but I found out that the collection is actually, if you look closely, it's actually quite good. They even had some Mike Gale books, while I was convinced they did not have it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this experiment I did by reading more English books. And now I want to know, if English is not your first language, do you read a lot of English books? And if English is your first language and you know a different language, do you read books in that language? And let me know what that language is, and if you read books in that language. I've only read books in Dutch and English so far, and I read a book with short stories in Afrikaans, the language they speak in South Africa, but it's quite similar to Dutch. I would love to try and read German. Well, I did read German books when I was in high school, but that was a very long time ago. But I would love to be able to read more languages, but on the other hand, Dutch and English is quite okay to do, I think. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this type of content and you're not a subscriber yet, then consider subscribing to my channel, and as always, happy reading.